Hi there, guys. This is Vinny Chopra, another edition of the Apartment Syndication Made Easy. I hope you have subscribed and given me 5-star reviews on the book on Amazon, or you can get a free copy of this book in print as well as in audio. Go ahead and just go to apartmentsyndicationmadeeasy.com. That's all it is, apartmentsyndicationmadeeasy.com. Again, today's episode, it's a great one, and we got a great guest here. Matthew Ryan is in the house. Actually, he started business in North Carolina, in Charlotte, and he lives in San Francisco in my backyard. I live in the Bay Area in Danville, Black Hawk, and it's so interesting that Matthew is right there. And we have meetup groups, Thrive groups, a lot of things over here. We might meet, sometime. The big thing was also, Matthew, I was thinking about buying a hotel, a Marriott hotel at the Charlotte airport. Charlotte airport, brother. Yeah, I saw Charlotte, I said, oh my gosh, we didn't end up buying before COVID. This was 2019. And luckily, I didn't buy it, with my partners.
Yeah, you dodged a bullet there, my brother.
I know. That would have been a little bit difficult, time. But let me share a little bit about Matt. Matt actually started with $95,000 in 2013, guys. Everybody listening and watching, I like to bring great guests who you can relate to. I know a lot of you are starting into multifamily, into all these different things and commercial space in 2013, and currently owns $4.5 million of real estate with another 2 million. That's 6.5 million in the phase 2 build outs via lot splits in the ground up residential. Average IRR of approximately 22%, which is, as you know, time value of money. That's worth almost 24, 25 ARR, the average annual return. Realized 1 million of equity invested. We have grown our construction pipeline to 5x and launched our Opportunity Zone Fund. We'll talk about that if you're thinking about Zone Fund. Also, something really intrigued about you, Matt, was, is it okay if I call you Matt? Yeah.
Yes, of course.
About green energy. And that is a huge one. So we'll dig all into it. So stay tuned and we'll go right into it. Hi, Matt. Welcome, bro. So you're right there in the Bay Area, and 8 years in the Bay Area. I've been here over 40 years, actually. And tell me more about you and how did you get into real estate and so forth, and talk about, I think, your superpower in green energy, why you got fascinated. You said something about your town or your state was going to benefit from it. And that was a great cause to get into it. Yeah.
I mean, I was at that point, I was searching for a career, not for a job, right?
Yeah.
Going back to, whenever I left my family's business, I think this was in 2010. I couldn't get hired. I worked at my father's company doing marketing. He kind of threw me into that department. I had no marketing background. I was trying to get jobs with agencies. It's 2010, 2009. No one's hiring, right? That's the last place you're going to get a job. And so I'd always been passionate about the environment. I saw what was happening through Obama and Secretary Chu at the time, who's the head of Department of Energy, this kind of large investment, not just in green energy, but in retrofitting existing residential commercial buildings. It was supposed to really revitalize the construction workforce. It was supposed to really be kind of one of our core elements of how we drive local jobs, in addition to, kind of revitalizing workforce. And, I said, man, this really sticks, and to your point, I read that study. I had been tinkering around with a couple organizations, including the U.S. Green Building Council, and reading this environmental study, a 3% reduction would in overall demand across the state of South Carolina would have, mitigated the need for this very controversial coal plant. And I'm like, 3%, how hard can that be, right? It's just kind of an entrepreneurial mindset. And so I ended up going to a conference in DC, came back with, met someone there. I said, hey, let's do this. Let's start in residential. And I effectively just kind of thrusted myself into it, graduated from a few of the programs in South Face Energy Institute, which is really kind of a national leader in that segment. And that's kind of what got started me in construction. So this was really just a very specialized trade in construction. Wow. And that really helped me. I was retrofitting existing apartment buildings in rural counties. I was retrofitting commercial buildings with lights, energy efficient lights. So I was helping homeowners solve moisture, humidity problems.
Mm-hmm.
We were helping new custom home builders make their buildings more efficient and more
Mm-hmm.
durable. You know, it was really a nice trade to get me into, you know, I didn't realize I was going to be a developer at that point, because it really threw me into a lot of different facets of construction and building and having to tie it all together. And the kind of fundamental way you look at it is called building science. And so
Yes.
it's comfort, energy efficiency, durability, and indoor air quality. Those are kind
I
of the
love it.
four.
I love it. And
Yeah,
with
yeah,
efficiency comes, utilities bills going down, right?
yes.
And then you have special, concessions maybe to the county also. And then maybe also some of the lenders look at it as a very favorable way
Yes.
because you are becoming, that's awesome. Awesome. And
Yeah.
that led you to the new path, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And so actually at the time I was still operating my construction company. I was starting to kind of get to the end of that road. The industry was looking a little rocky. Not a lot of people had scaled, subcontracting organizations to the level that I wanted to get to. So I was looking for something else. I had a small pool of money that I had invested with call it a stockbroker that, did it as a favor to my dad. It wasn't a lot of money. And I remember getting like a 2.5% return, at that time. And I was like, man, this is what a joke, like I just, again, kind of an entrepreneurial mindset. I said, I think I can do better. And my buddy had been hounding me. I had house hacked before, so I was kind of familiar with the process, had bought a foreclosed condo in Charlotte. And I found a foreclosed duplex just right around the corner from me in an up and coming neighborhood, and invested in that, did all my energy efficiency, kind of green building things. I always joke that I made a one pager and gave it to my first prospective tenant. I was so enthusiastically excited, but I met them that night at the place. And this was kind of still an up and coming neighborhood. And I didn't even have the power on yet. And I remember my friends laughing at me and making fun of me because they're like, dude, you took them to that property with no lights on, and I just so incredibly naive. Right. But I was so passionate. And I think the people, were kind of could feel that enthusiasm that I had for the product that I had delivered. Right. It was just a little, 1,800 square foot duplex. But they saw that the time and energy that I put into it, and they rented it from me, the next morning. So it was kind of like the light bulb went off. I mean, the fundamentals on that deal to this day, it was like a 12% cash on cash. I think I hit like a 28 or 32% IRR once I sold.
I love it.
Yeah, I 1030.
Love it. I can just feel in your voice enthusiasm, and let's talk about that. I think that'll be a good one to talk about. I think, myself also, I believe I've been portrayed as Mr. Enthusiasm or Mr. Smiles. I smile a lot, things like that. But you know what? It's so important to be excited about and how we present those ideas, whether they'll be accepted or not accepted by our customers or investors or broker, anybody, right? So enthusiasm, tell me more about your personality a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, personality wise, I think I've always been, fairly kind of driven in my cause, that once I find something, it's pretty hard for me to let go of it. I've always been passionate about, what it is, the things that I believe in. And then obviously, kind of strong opinions. I always joke with people, I had Midwestern parents, but I was raised in the South. So I kind of had this like wonderful hybrid of like being a very frank and upfront kind of blue collar mentality person with a little bit of Southern, touch. I mean, the enthusiasm for me is, I just didn't know that I was going to become a developer. I just knew I was passionate about this industry. What I really enjoyed was pairing business with kind of these larger socioeconomic problems, right? So, especially looking at, call it low-income housing. We did some retrofits on mobile homes where these mobile homes were out in rural counties in South Carolina, and they had utility bills sometimes of $300, $400, $500 a month. And if you've ever bought a mobile home park or tried to invest in one,
small, mobile home parks, that's a lot of energy.
Like $400 to $600 is like basically what those people would pay on a lease, right? And so we were going in there, and what was happening is these old heating units they installed 20 years ago, it's called electric resistance heat. They were the culprit, in addition to some really bad ductwork that they just kind of come pre-packaged when they built these units. And so we were going in there and we were retrofitting these as part of a study through the utility program, a grant that we got awarded, that we were actually like retrofitting and literally cutting these people utility bills in half. And so when you think about,
That's
being
amazing.
able to feel passionate, not just about the trade that you're executing on, but the impact that has on people. That was, I loved about green building, is it was really a great segue for me to understand, energy consumption, how that not only affects people's upward mobility, right, but also where those buildings are located, how that affects upward mobility. And secondarily, just the overall condition of the home, the air quality, the comfort, how that affects a person's life and how it affects their lifestyle.
Oh
And
my
actually
gosh.
for me, yeah, that really resonated and it touched. And so when I
Oh, I
got the
can just
opportunity,
feel it in my side. What you're
thank you,
saying is by
man.
cutting down the bill, that's more disposable income at
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
level.
Yeah, I mean, that's
And
going
their
to
life
massively
is
impact those
better.
people's lives. Yeah. And so, we've taken a lot of that when we focused on, as I parlayed into Revive, and there's a whole other story associated with that, it was really workforce housing. That was what I liked. That was what moved me initially. The story of Miss Pam that kind of got me, started and became the thesis of Revive. And so we've really just been focused on workforce housing and then trying to pair that, with basically just taking all the what I had and I learned in that trade and implementing that. We're not necessarily achieving certifications. There's green building certification programs and stuff. I think those are great, and I don't have an issue with them. It's just like, as an early developer that's trying to grow our business and really build, as you mentioned, it's hard to have just that extra file and paperwork. So we've just kind of taken like a few key things, implemented them on our build side. And and that's just, but back to your question, as far as the passion, I've always tried to pair business with what, kind of a larger thesis and tackling what I consider to be socioeconomic issues.
Economically
And
impacting.
for me, I think that's what it makes it easier to get up in the morning, knowing that you feel connected to something, that there's a problem in society. And
higher
so,
purpose.
yeah.
I'm so happy. Dylan Marma, a good friend of mine, he's been in mobile home parks, a lot of them. Actually, he just closed one $21 million worth. He's into 200 million, something like
Wow.
300 maybe. So several of them in North Carolina, South Carolina, in Florida, all over the place. But this is very exciting for me to see how you could retrofit right there and save money and the quality of life. That's what I find, if we get that niche where you're able to fulfill the need, that's so important. Like in my case, I don't know if I've gone into senior assisted living quite a bit and memory
That's
care.
awesome.
Yeah, because, seniors are turning that 65 and baby boomers turning, and then 70, 80, 90 years of age. So I think there is a big niche that we could fulfill. So let me ask you a question. So at this time, you are also doing the land sales and going through ordinance changes and all. Kind of run us through some of your gambit there.
Yeah. So originally we were going to focus on value add, workforce housing. We pivoted into the co-living sector, which is a rent a bedroom model where people are sharing common spaces. We did that about 2019. And we've been, just knuckle grinding on that industry for the last 3 years. We have 2 projects right now, one in Denver, one in Sacramento. Okay. We're getting ready to do a phase 2 build out on our Denver project. So we'll have another co-living, facility right next door to the one the old historic building that we're currently retrofitting. In Sacramento, we're also retrofitting a previously office that was residential, converted to office. We're converting back to residential.
In Denver,
in Denver, and then downtown Sacramento.
Sacramento is close to me, like hour and a half for you too. From San Francisco.
And that's where our
other back. How did it start, and how big an area it is? And I'm very curious to see.
Yeah, it really kind of started with my good friend of mine, Tyler Kobick, who's an architect here locally. He introduced me to a guy, Ben Provin of Open Door, who was a co-living operator. And, just meeting those guys and understanding the product. It was one of those things I started peeling the layers back. I was kind of like, co-living, that sounds like, a bunch of hippies, staying in a commune kind of thing. But then I toured Ben's facility in Oakland, and a couple others. And I started digging into the demographics, and I started realizing like, there's 45 million Gen Zs who are going to hit the market over the next decade. Wow. We're looking at the affordability crisis that exists, not just nationally, but within that particular market segment of 22 to 35s. You look at job growth coming out of the 2010 recession over a million, or excuse me, the majority of the jobs were created in cities of over 1 million people, right? So we're still, even though, especially in a post-COVID world where there's a lot of talk about migration out of cities, but the fact remains is coming out of every recession, historically, cities have continued to be large job producers, and not just jobs, but high power, high paying jobs. And so, this housing issue that we've had, where cities, from my perspective, they really punted and missed their opportunity, to really, quote, revitalize urban cores. And now they're facing kind of this existential crisis with the office market.
Yeah.
Housing is still an issue. And so I think we've really got an interesting time and opportunity to address that, both within our cities, but also within a market segment. And to me, co-living really gravitated, towards that big why and the addressable market. And then secondarily, when I first started in development, I was very interested in this idea of community revitalization and kind of this idea of that there's a lot of conflict between developers and the community at large. And that a lot of these revitalizing areas that are, and all this contentiousness around gentrification, I'm very fascinated by it. And I think it's a very large problem that we as a society, specifically the United States, have to solve, right? And be better about solving. And it's really difficult because there's a lot of parties, right? There's a lot of people who are kind of wrapped around each other, both in the public and private sector. And, going back to the co-living product, I thought that it was interesting that it really helped deliver housing for a specific, 22 to 35 demographic that was kind of being blamed for gentrifying these neighborhoods, which frankly, a lot of these young people are moving in these neighborhoods because they're affordable, not because they want to push a person of lower socioeconomic status out, right? They just are looking for affordable housing. And, I look at the co-living product as kind of helping reduce competition, because when we talk about gentrification, it's really competition for existing housing, right? Development, I always joke and I say development only displaces ants, right? It only displaces worms in the ground. It doesn't actually gentrify or displace residents. But if we could deliver more co-living product in these kind of suburban cores or areas of the urban core that would alleviate some of the pressure on the existing housing, could we then alleviate some of the displacement that's happening, and some of these seniors and some of these older members of the community being able to hold on to their housing because they're not getting pushed out from a younger generation who's looking for housing. And so again, there was a very much a strong why behind the product, in addition to, frankly, the returns and the addressable market and everything that's happening. I still think we're at the, in the chasm of adoption. We're still right over here in the living world. And as evident today, Common, one of the largest property management operators in the country, just merged with the largest European operator. So you're seeing a massive consolidation. Greystar just launched their co-living brand that was quoted in the same Wall Street Journal article.
Wow.
So, this is a market that is going to be an established segment of the apartment, and has been kind of sputtering along for 3 years. And frankly, I just think it's going to explode. And so
I love it.
Those are kind of the reasons why we got.
Because, in the Bay Area, it's so hard for young people. I mean, 800,000 is, I think, average price over here or something. How could you afford? And also the down payment and all. Not only if the parents give you down payment, how about the job, which will be to suffice to live.
Well, and whenever I moved to the Bay Area, I went through that problem. I did the roommate share interviews. I went through that process. Now I had a 115-pound dog. God bless her. She's in a better place now. She had a good 14-year run, but I went through all that awkwardness. I remember walking in the rain, in January or February, thinking, what am I doing here? What is it? This is I've been looking for housing for 60 days and I just, hit after hit, and just I was very close to quitting and just kind of being man, this is not the right place for me. For whatever reason I stayed, but seeking housing shouldn't be that complex.
So
right.
True.
And I was looking for a career at the time. I was taking kind of a little short-term sabbatical in between leaving my contracting company. I was still in limbo about what I was doing. Re-viv was just an idea in my head. So trying to balance job seeking plus seeking housing, I guess this shouldn't be that challenging.
Yeah.
And I think if we're going to alleviate that for the next generation so they can focus on the more important things and kind of get back to rebuilding this idea of what the American dream is in the next generation, I think housing has to be a fundamental solution, not a problem for them.
So true, so true. You just brought me my memories back. When we moved here, we bought our first home for $99,000. 99, 3-bedroom, brand new home,
Yeah.
2-story, brother. I couldn't believe it. 1,245 square feet, I think. And that's probably now 1.9 million. It's like,
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy.
a lot more than that, maybe even,
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. It's like these guys, and I see these guys, these late stage, millennials and Gen Zs, it may be that home ownership is out of the question for them, right? I mean, we're seeing a substantial drop. All the projections are saying home ownership is going to continue to drop, over the course of the decades. So we're kind of moving into this fundamental rental-based market.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's the case, and the American dream, the kind of pillar of building wealth was home ownership, what's going to replace that? These kids are going to have to start creating or have a means of disposable income available to them to either save or invest earlier. Yeah. And if they're putting 45% of their income into just housing, we're breeding another generation of fundamentally poor, people who don't have access to an ability for upward mobility. And I know that strikes home with you because you are kind of that. I've read your story. You are the American dream, right? And you talk about what motivates me. I saw my father go through the same thing, growing through his career and drive till you qualify and mega commutes. He did all that stuff, so it also kind of resonates with me that, I think about it in a much more global context, which is what does the American dream look like for the next generation? And how are these, and how are we going to solve these problems to leave the pathway for people? Because I think there's a lot of contentiousness about what that means, what the dream means to people and what it is to accomplish it. And, fundamentally, I looked to buy a house here in the Bay a year or so ago. I ran the numbers. It made much more sense for me to go and invest that money in real estate
somewhere to make the money grow and then come back and
And so I think it's an interesting time to kind of reshape financial literacy and how people invest and how they do it earlier. But again, if they're spending 45% of their income on rent, that's not even out of the question.
It's mind-boggling, literally, and as compared to other parts, and with the mobility and portability, we call it now job, right? You can work from wherever. I mean, a lot of people have moved away from the metro areas to more outside. I know, like where I live, Danville, California, the prices just went through the roof because a lot of people wanted to move from San Francisco, and that got the frenzy going where we are in Black Hawk. I mean, just the prices just shot up in the last 3 years, But no, that's nice. Let me ask you a question. A couple of things I ask, like what kind of books are you reading now, or what maybe 1 or 2 books have really shaped your thinking? You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Who Not How is
Who Not How. Oh, right there. I mean, as a matter of fact, we talked about it. Who Not How is an amazing book. And tell me more about it. I know I've shared that with my audiences before.
I mean, Dan Sullivan and Peter Diamandis, right? I listened to their abundance podcasts off and on, kind of infrequently. I always enjoyed, I think when you're listening and you're reading, you kind of want people you're kind of drawn to the people who speak very simplistically about things. And that's what I always loved about the two of them, Dan Sullivan in particular, is it's such a simple book. There's nothing like, it's not mind-boggling. This isn't quantum physics. And I love those books that kind of really shift your mindset. Like really, it's sticky, right? Yeah. And that was what I loved about this book, is it really stuck with me. And it was also very timely for me. And I try to vary my recommendations of book. And I would more give advice as like how to read versus what to read. And what I try to do is sometimes I'll have 4 or 5 books that are quote open on my Kindle. And the nice thing about that is, even though it's kind of random, is I'll tend to pick up a book when it's relevant to me.
Yeah, exactly. Even some pages I've found, sometimes you pick up a page, you're looking for some answer, and there it is. Right there.
and so we're in that moment now where I'm really starting to look, in real estate, you have a lot of third parties, a lot of vendors, contractors, people that work for you, but they're not your like W-2 employees. And so we're really, we're up to, I'll correct you for just a second, because we're up to soon to be about 12 million in assets under management, right? So,
oh, wow.
Still very small. Thank you. Still very small, still a boutique developer, but kind of hitting that okay, now we've really got to scale the team.
Yes.
And so that's what I loved about Dan's book, is it was very relevant for me. It really made me think about the fact that this business is, if it's going to grow to the next phase, it's not going to be about Matt Ryan. It's going to be about who is in our team and who really
Yes.
takes the vision forward. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's a really hard thing to let go of that, no matter what your phase or acceptance of it is.
Yep.
And I think the sooner you kind of see that and you can find a way to get people on board, you know, that kind of share that vision, which is frankly, like, it's not easy. You know, I'm 6 years into it. It's a process. But it just made me really, it opened my eyes a lot. And so that's kind of number one. The second one is, I always love Howard Marks's the most important thing.
The most important thing. Oh, right.
The most important thing. Yeah. He talks a lot about, I mean, he's a famous bond trader. He's up there with the Buffetts of the world. And, you know, the lesson that I always take from it that I try to share with everyone is, you know, in investing, it's always the things that you don't know that are the most dangerous, and the things that hurt you the most. And again, a very broad, simplistic statement, you know, almost kind of sounds like, oh yeah, sure, whatever. But when you're doing a deal and you're in your due diligence, you know, I suffered from it. And I think it's maybe a good cautionary way to go, which is analysis paralysis, right? Like, you can overanalyze deals. And I think it's a good phase to go through, because it's really, I think it helps you identify with those things that you don't know, right? It's like, yeah, this is the pro forma. This is what I understand about this deal, but let's flip the script and let's pretend as though I'm interviewing myself. You know, what do I not know? What are the things I always ask people, what is the bogey? You know, what is the thing that's kind of lurking in the background that no one's seeing, that no one's paying attention to? And if you don't ask those questions and really take the time to kind of, you know, meditate on those things, you're going to miss them. And it'll funny when it happens, when that really negative thing, or that, you know, that bogey comes out of the shadows, you'll be like, man, I remember thinking about that, right? Or like, I remember that small detail that it kind of popped in my head and I just kind of pushed it away, you know? And I think that's, in our business, you know, risk assessment and analysis, that's what we do, right? That is what keeps us in business. So those are kind of the two that I think are the
nice. No, those are amazing books, both of them. And now, before I let you go, I want to see in the background, I know you're a surfer, you're also into music, right? Guitars.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a great surfer. It's, you know, this is San Francisco, so we're a little limited on storage. So it makes a good prop. So I will not claim to be a great surfer at all. You know, I joked with you, a struggling musician, aspirational musician for many years. You know, it's one of those good outlets, one of those things that I swear I'll get better at one of these days. But you know, it's really just kind of about a good place to decompress. And yeah, every once in a while, there's a little, you know, maraca and ukulele. I get my young kids down here and we have a little jam session. It's kind of fun. Those are just the little things that we do. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, I'm a huge backcountry, you know, camping. I just went skiing in Tahoe, you know, kind of an outdoorsman.
Lovely.
I've always had a lot more hobbies than I've had time, which is good.
Fabulous. I know my co-host, Bo Eckstein, we do a live show on Friday mornings, 9 a.m. Then I do Abundance Mindset with Vinny Chopra and Walter. We do it on Thursday morning, but we might be putting a big bar over here, Ria Bar in San Ramon, I heard.
Oh, wow.
So maybe, you know, if you came there, I'll probably look forward to seeing you. I'll be speaker there and so on, you know.
That's great.
Yeah. No, good visiting with you. And how could people reach you if, you know, as they're getting great nuggets from you in this episode? Yeah,
just head over to our website. There's a calendar link on there. You can schedule a time with me. I think our direct line, reaching one of myself or our staff on there. We try to keep it pretty simple for people.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So just go to www.re-viv.com.
Show notes also. Yeah. No, thank you for your time. Really appreciate your hanging out with me, and not too far. I'm right here in Danville. You're in San Francisco. I know our daughter lives there. And is it raining over there now? No.
It was absolutely pouring.
Yeah. Oh, it was.
Interesting morning trying to get around the city. But yeah, you know, hey, we'll take the rain as much as we can.
Totally. Right? Oh my gosh, California rains where we live. Mountains are looking greener. And as a matter of fact, our home in Blackhawk, we didn't have electricity for 3 days. From the New Year Eve, we were in candlelight and all. And 3rd of January, the electricity came back. But it's all part of life, you know. Hey, It's okay. Matt, hey, thank you, brother. Thank you for
Oh, thank
joining
you for
me,
having me,
and
man.
good luck to you with your all the endures, what you're doing. And we'll talk again, huh?
Thank
Sure,
you, Vinny. It's a
sure.
pleasure. Thanks so much for having
You
me.